Hello. Guys, I am so very happy to finally be in this position, and I am incredibly thankful for so many people and all the hard work they've done today. I think we absolutely need to recognize our president, Tiana. Worked tirelessly, and she's still planning 1,000 things, and we could not have done this without you. I am very excited that this is our 25th anniversary of the RWA Kiss of Death, Daphne du Maurier Award for Excellence in Mystery and Suspense, and someday I'd like to shorten that name. Thank you so much to our volunteers. We cannot do it without your help. So Doug Johnson is a website guru. He joined Kiss of Death like decades ago because he thought he wanted to write romantic suspense, and somehow we suckered him into creating the actual website that we use for the writing contest, and he has been kind enough to stay with us. Applause for Doug. Mize is our judge coordinator. So if you were a judge in our contest this year, you had contact with her. Kimberly Pride was our published entry coordinator. She handled all of the entries for our published entrants. Linda Rees was for unpublished. And our judges did a phenomenal job, and we cannot do this without them. So thank you so much to our judges. And Jen Graybill, thank you for not blocking my number. So a little bit about me. My name is Erin Novotny. I write as Toby Doyle. I started off in Kiss of Death many years ago, and I started as a published entry coordinator. From there, I've just been suckered in and keep working on it. So it's very nice that I've done every job. So it's nice that I'm now the coordinator. And I was also fortunate enough to be the past president for 2 years, and I am thrilled to death that Tiana has taken over that role. Like, seriously, thrilled to death. Okay, a little bit about Daphne du Maurier. Her first book was The Loving Spirit in 1931. She was 22 years old. She got married the following year. She was raised by theater folk, which I find lovely. She called her husband Boyd. And when his name is Frederick Arthur Montague. Later, she called him Moper. When they got married, he was very handsome. I actually got to go to the Daphne du Maurier Museum that is at the Jamaica Inn in England, in Cornwall, the day of the Daphne du Maurier Award ceremony last year. So that's where I was, because my husband loves more. So they got married, lovely, lovely couple. He had to go to war, and when he returned, and of course, when he was at war, she was living in Menifee, which is what the house Mandalay is based on. That was her favorite house ever. So when he returned, he had PTSD, and unfortunately, they didn't really treat that back then. Okay, so we have two categories, two divisions, published and unpublished. And what I'd like to do is, I love this quote from Gambino Iglesias, monthly reminder, many people have a book in them, but it takes a special kind of hero to leave the land of laziness, cross the plains of procrastination, and insecurity mountain, find the blade of no one made you do this. Yes. And use it to cut your chest open and yank that book out. To all of our entrants, you guys are amazing. How our scoring works for this contest. For the unpublished, we have 4 judges. For the published division, we have 3. We usually drop the lowest score. A tiebreaker happens. There's actually questions on the judging form for the tiebreaker. If there's still a tie after that, then we consider the lowest score. If there's still a tie after that, then we send it to a special committee. None of our books had to go to this point, so I'm very happy to say, because that would have been awkward. Hey, can you read 4 books in a day? I would really love to encourage all of you to consider being a judge. If you love reading mystery, if you love reading suspense, I don't care if you're an author, you just have to like the subject matter. You get to help a writer by offering constructive comments and encouragement. You get to read free books. Come on, people. And there is a free orientation provided. So please consider. All right, so we are going to start with our first category, which is unpublished mainstream. Our category finalists are Black Mark by Paul Spencer. I asked every entrant to please tell me what made you want to write the story, because that always interests me, and I got to put this together, so that's why we're doing it. So in the last one, Paul Spencer said what made him want to write the story, he lived in Portland during the Black Lives Matter protests and was constantly frustrated by the sensationalist media reports of riots and chaos, when the truth was that protests were almost entirely peaceful and any trouble was usually instigated by the police. That planted the seed of an idea about a rich and powerful creating straw men, bad guys to blame for their own wrongdoing, which in turn morphed into Black Mark's story of corruption and murder. Also, he used to be a defense attorney, and he saw firsthand the inequities inherent in the American justice system, which gave him the inspiration to create and portray Elliot's mistreatment at the hands of the police and the courts. Next, we have Facets of Murder by Julie Ciccarelli. This is a picture of Jules, her dearly missed dog. Aww. Yeah. The genesis for this story was an anniversary trip taken by my best friend and her husband to Port Townsend, Washington. Yeah, the hotel they were staying in had seen better days. In fact, there was a hole in one of the walls. Being a mystery writer, she began to imagine all sorts of possibility for what lay behind that wall. The focus on gemstones, jewelry, and history comes from her own passions for those topics and her work as a jewelry artisan. Our next finalist is Carolyn Garrod for Nothing But the Truth. She came up with this character in a writing workshop and really wanted to figure out what she was hiding. The only way she could figure out what she was hiding was to write her story, and she surprised her every step of the way. She loves antiheroes, moral gray areas, and complex women doing things for complex reasons. And Amanda has all of that in spades. It's been exciting to get to know the character, even as she's created her. It's great to realize she's written something that isn't right for her because it means she understands her character and who she is. Oriole by Mary Keenan. Oriole started as her first attempt at writing suspense, but she soon realized she wanted to write an oil and water mother-daughter story in a mainstream mystery format. I'm like, oh, that hurts. She says, I thought it would be interesting if the daughter solves the crime while holding her nose and at great personal risk in order to save her mother's life. Not for her mother's sake, but simply to be able to sleep at night afterward. Working out all the details and the possibility this woman might come to care for her mom pulled her in. Then she found herself enthralled by each of the other four characters and the ways they interact with each other, pulling and pushing as it serves their own objectives. It's been a wonderful project to work on, so much fun. Next, we have Vintage Model by T.K. Sheffield. Her big book inspiration for her to write the Backyard Model Mystery Series was her Wisconsin backyard. Her husband and she moved into a fixer-upper with a gorgeous backyard in 2019. The view of the pines, birds, and wildlife inspired me to write a cozy mystery. She combined her love of mysteries, fashion, and a beautiful yard with a plot. A retired fashion model returns to her beloved touristy hometown only to discover killer posers lurking within. Model Suspect, the working title is Vintage Model, will be released in November 2023. Since writing Model Suspect, she's acquired a literary agent and has written Model Suspect and its sequel, Pontoon, Romance Boats, and Bad Business in Wisconsin Northwoods, which will be out in May 24. She's also ginned up the courage to enter contests. So that's very exciting. All right, and now for our winners. Our honorable mentions go to Oriole by Mary Keenan, Vintage Model by T.K. Sheffield. Third place goes to Nothing But the Truth by Carolyn Varad. Second place goes to Julie Ciccarelli for The Facets of Murder. And first place goes to Paul Spencer for Black Mark. He wasn't able to attend, but he sent us a message, and I'm hoping this will play.
Thank you all very much. I'm delighted to receive the Daphne du Maurier Award for Excellence in Mystery and Suspense. To have my work recognised by such an esteemed group of writers is a great honour for me. I would have loved to collect the award in person, but I live in Spain, so the commute was a bit much. I'd like to thank the judges and everyone involved for their efforts, and I'd also like to congratulate my fellow finalists for their great work. Let's all use this as inspiration to keep writing. Thank you.
Writers should be read, but neither seen nor heard. Is Daphne du Maurier on writing. I also asked our entrants if they had read any of Daphne du Maurier and what their favorites were. Janet Ciccarelli was the finalist in Mainstream Unpublished, said she has read Daphne du Maurier. Her favorite is Rebecca. She says, I am astonished with her skill in creating atmosphere and characters. Mary Keenan says, I'm sure I wasn't a teenager yet when I discovered Daphne du Maurier, and I read anything of hers I could get my hands on. I particularly loved Rebecca, of course, and My Cousin Rachel Has Never Really Left Me. Those two novels trade so well on the possibility of betrayal, even to the point of murder, by somebody you feel you know, somebody you trust more than anyone else in your life. Being that wrong about somebody you've taken so deeply into your psyche is the most shattering form of fear, I think, and she presents it utterly convincingly. Our next category is unpublished romantic suspense. And by the way, we are doing our finalists in alphabetical order. Our first entrant or finalist is High Altitude Abduction by Elaine Clampett. Next, we have His Partner by Karen White Owens. Karen said she woke up one morning with a question in her head that morphed into a manuscript entitled Reinventing Riley. She wanted to find out how a woman confined to a wheelchair after years of working as a police officer on Detroit streets would find a way to continue to do the work that she loved. After an auto accident steals the use of her legs, Riley reinvents herself in a second career that keeps her as part of the police department and gives her an opportunity to have the life that she's always wanted. This story involves a sniper that loves to break glass and believes he has the power to make Riley whole by putting her through a sheet of glass. Ooh, that sounds scary. Next, we have Murder's Mistress by Eliza Carter. I came up with the character of Adele d'Orvain before she had a setting or even a mystery to solve. She is a practical but vain, conniving yet kind-hearted. She often acts aloof when in company, but she is stubbornly loyal to those she loves. I am a huge fan of mysteries that have multiple points of view, but Adele's voice kept taking over, and I reworked the original manuscript to be in first person. Her sometimes outrageous observations of the society she inhabits come to the fore. I placed her in Tudor England because I am, quite simply, obsessed with the history of this era. Also, the court of Henry VIII, full of political intrigue and personal grudges, is the perfect fodder for a mystery series. I knew I wanted the stakes for Adele to be high with Murder's Mistress, the first of a series I have planned featuring her along with her estranged but dishy spouse as the sleuths. She is accused of the murder of one of her clients and must find the real culprit before she is imprisoned and executed. Next, we have Suspended in Darkness by Anne Boleyn. I'd love to include, having helped organize and run so many writers' conferences back in the day, I always heard plenty of jokes about everyone walking away from the event about writing one, but it seems that not many people ever do. I thought it would be interesting to write from the point of view of someone who wasn't an attendee, and having met so many agents and editors and seeing their perspective, thought this would be a fun angle. As for the genre, I knew I wanted something mystery. It's me after all. And I love spooky. The idea of a harmless pitch turning into something bizarre was inspired by a real life story I heard from an agent friend. No ghosts were involved with that though. I'd tell you the story, but that's her to spill. The theme of the story developed as it normally does for me because something else is weighing on my mind. At that time, my agent had just passed away unexpectedly, and I was reflecting on career choices. That led me to thinking about my prior career as a parole officer and the victims of abuse I had met along the way. Without getting too personal here, those musings dredged up feelings and conflicting emotions in me, and those feelings bled onto the page as the story progressed. And next we have Tasman Lee and the Jaguar God by Annie R. McEwen. I was glad to be asked what motivated me to write this particular novel, and it's a question that, for me, unlocks a great deal of memory. I am the child and grandchild of immigrants. When I was born, America had yet to grasp the concept inclusivity. My parents and grandparents suffered quite a bit from their immigrant status, and even I, born in America, had to cope with the labels and assumptions applied to those of immigrant background. The protagonist of my novel, Tasman Lee, is a firstborn immigrant child. To make her situation more challenging, her father is Chinese. In the setting of my novel, 1912 America, there was a great deal of anti-Asian sentiment, and this is something that both traumatizes and strengthens Tasman Lee. In many respects, my real journey through life became her fictional one. And the winners are honorable mention, Murder's Mistress, Eliza Carter, and she's here tonight. Yeah, would you like to come up? We have a lovely certificate. And a, yeah, you're welcome. Congratulations. Suspended in Darkness, Anne Boleyn. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Third place goes to His Partner by Karen White Owens. Second place goes to Tasman Lee and the Jaguar God by Annie R. McEwen. To Elaine Clampett for High Altitude Abduction. So Elaine did send an acceptance speech. She said, when I decided I wanted to be a writer, I knew nothing about the craft or the industry. Surely writing was something I could learn to do. After all, I love to read. Attending my first writing conference should have given me a clue. I embarked on my journey full of doubts and optimism. My only preparation, a mountain of craft books and a carry-on bag for what I soon realized was a Bear Grylls version of a month-long trip navigating the Amazon.
No.
Definitely not for the faint of heart. Thankfully, I found local writing chapters, national conferences, writing retreats, and other writers to meet with regularly, and too many good craft books, which got me confused about the whole process.
Yeah.
Same. I press forward while dealing with all the hardship life throws in our way, taking breaks to heal and ponder life's lessons. I've often looked back on my journey and thought, if I knew then what I know now, would I have even started this journey? My answer has always been yes. At this point, I figure I've invested too much into a journey to quit now. If you can relate to my journey, I encourage you to continue. You are learning each step of the way, and I bet you'll find a lot of your struggles will make it into one of your books. There's no timetable you have to meet. Each one of us has a unique path to follow, and I will gladly cheer you on. It is such an honor to be part of this 25th anniversary celebration of the Daphne du Maurier Award. and it is a dream come true to win this special award. Thank you to the Kiss of Death chapter for making this opportunity available. I know a lot of hard work goes on behind the scenes, and I appreciate all of it. Congratulations to all the other finalists. A big thank you to those who have encouraged and supported me over the years. I can't express how much of your time and sharing your gifts and talents has meant to me, whether for over a decade or recently. Thank you again for this honor. Congratulations, Elaine. Okay, so this is me when I went to Jamaica Inn, because I'm so lucky. So actually, Jamaica Inn was published in 1936, and that is actually Jamaica Inn. So it's a smuggler's inn, if you did not know. What happened was, they actually have done a really nice job trying to keep it spooky on the inside, making it look like it did back when she probably visited in 1936. But surrounding this whole area are moors. And Menonbilly is not too far from there. And Daphne du Maurier was, in fact, an avid equestrian. So she went out on a ride and could not get home because of all the fog. So she saw the lights on the inn. They checked her in, they allowed her to stay the night, and they put her in the haunted room. Yes, so on that spot or in that place, Joss Murden was murdered, and from there she wrote the book, Jamaica Inn. Let's see. I've also asked our contestants to say things about her. Tony Anderson, who's a finalist in Long Pub, said, I love Jamaica Inn and actually visited the inn in Fowey, where she lived for much of her life on my honeymoon. Her stories were atmospheric and absorbing. She was way ahead of her time. Tracy Devlin, also a finalist and Long published, said, Daphne du Maurier is one of my literary heroes, or should I say heroines. I have a beautifully bound and illustrated 4-book collection of her 4 most popular works, Rebecca, Frenchman's Creek, Jamaica Inn, and My Cousin Rachel. And who could ever forget her short story, The Birds? Du Maurier's writing is gorgeous, atmospheric, and often terrifying in what is left unsaid. A true master of the genre. So if you didn't know, she did write a lot of short stories, which is why we included the novellas this year. All right, we are ready now for our published division categories. We had mainstream mystery and suspense, so there doesn't have to be any romance in that. We have novella, mystery and suspense, also a shortened, well, a novella, which did not require romance. Long romantic suspense is 60,000 words and more. Short romantic suspense, less. And then finally, our paranormal and historical romantic suspense, while they were judged by those judges. So if you entered in paranormal, you were judged by paranormal judges. However, we wanted to make sure that we had enough category or people entrance in the category, so we combined those into romantic suspense. Our first for published mainstream mystery and suspense category finalists is Compromised Vows by Nadine Dandorf. She wrote the story because this is the 3rd story in my Adrienne Riley series. I didn't plan on writing a trilogy for now when I started out, but as I kept creating, I knew I needed both a professional arc and a personal one once he meets the love of his life. Book 1 is a story about clearing his names in the eyes of the military and his country, and bringing a traitor to justice with the help of the woman whose father warned of the traitor. Book 2 is the story about being betrayed by her country and how Riley navigates both the wrongful accusation, hidden secrets, and her old lover, who may be the only one who can save her. The book being judged in the Daphne du Maurier contest is the 3rd book that tests Riley's promise to stop hunting madmen and forces him to confront the lie he's always told himself, that he is unworthy of love and family. Our next book is Exposed by Anna J. Stewart. She said, what made me want to write this book? Joy. After her editor asked me, what do you want to write? From that moment on, she hit the ground running. No restrictions, no pushback, no doubts, only faith. This book contains all her obsessions: unsolved murders, a secret society, a chance to pay homage to old Hollywood, and most of all, a romance between a super feisty paparazzo heroine and a no-nonsense honorable cop who clash in pretty much every way possible. It also has a large cast of characters, many of whom will be getting their own stories in the near future. This was truly the most free I've ever felt while writing, and for that I will be forever grateful. Next we have Hooker Avenue by Jody Millman. She says it was a true crime on her doorstep that made her want to write this story. In 2000, Kendall Francois was convicted in New York's Dutchess County Court of killing 8 women who had disappeared from 1996 to 1998. Many of them were prostitutes who had been solicited from the front steps of her law office in downtown Poughkeepsie.
Wow.
Yeah, that's scary. In macabre fashion, Francois had murdered them and buried them in his home, which was located a few blocks from her home. Since it is rare that a crime fiction writer has the opportunity to look a prospective antagonist in the eye, and being intrigued, she attended Francois's pretrial sentencing hearing. Distraught families gathered in the courtroom to address Francois and the judge, begging for the imposition of the ultimate punishment available at the time, capital death. He was sentenced to 16 life sentences without parole and died in prison in 2014. Giving a voice to the sex workers' stories and the failure of the criminal justice system to find the perpetrator inspired me to write Hooker Avenue. Last Liar Standing by Danielle Wong. I was actually sitting on an airplane reading the newspaper when I first came up with the idea for Last Liar Standing. The article claimed the average person was keeping about 13 secrets, and I immediately knew I wanted to write a novel inspired by that fact. From there, my main characters emerged and took over. I felt like a conduit during much of the writing process, transferring their words onto the page and trying my best to do their story justice. Spirit Daughters by Carol Potenza. A long time ago, I presented some archaeology in a biochemistry class about how scientists could figure out what was stored in ancient clay pots by taking a small sample of the pots inside and analyzing it. I loved that idea and wanted to use it one day in a book. But what if it wasn't food that was stored in the pot, but a medicine or tea? A fertility tea drunk from a double-spouted wedding vase by the couple getting married. And what if the fertility tea actually worked in a very unexpected and miraculous way, such that it would be priceless? And what if the pursuit of this priceless medicine led to murder? I really enjoyed this book because it was so much fun to write. All right, those are some tough finalists. Our honorable mention goes to Hooker Avenue by Jody Millman. Our next goes to Compromise Vows by Nadine Damdorf. Third place goes to Last Liar Standing by Danielle Wong. Second place goes to Exposed by Anna J. Singer. Now you know why I was able to use the back of your head. Carol.
This is my sister.
Like, words.
Okay, I know. Oh my goodness, I did not expect this. I really didn't. I really appreciate this. I just want you to know, I want to thank all of the people who read the books. And you just made me want to become a judge. So I'm actually, I really would like to contribute that way. And I really appreciate everything you've done. I've been a part of a chapter that runs a contest, and I've been up to midnight, 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, making sure everything gets read and all of the sheets are in and all of the scores are put together. So I really, really appreciate this. And this is just a love, oh my goodness. This is really lovely. And I just want to say one more thing. So we had a lot of cancer in our family during this time. And my agent had said to me, look, this book is not going to get published because of what's in it. You need to drop it. And I couldn't, it just literally, as I wrote it, I was able to escape inside of this book and just live through this time that we were going through in my family. Right, Allison? And so this book is a book of my heart, and I really do appreciate it.
Oh. On writing, she says, when one is writing a novel in the first person, one must be that person. I would like to add, not if you're writing a serial killer. Annie R. McEwens, who was a finalist in the romantic suspense unpublished category, said, as to the influence of Daphne du Maurier on her work, she's only now assessing it for the major impact it is. She started reading du Maurier in high school, first her short stories, then her novels. Even though she later spent 30 years on the stage, she didn't know that for a long time that oh my Lord, I can't say it now, it's done. I've said it too many times. Du Maurier was a playwright, but the emerging actor-director in me recognized that there was something fundamentally theatrical in her work, whether her setting is Bodega Bay or a manor house on the Cornish coast. She builds suspense in a way a good play does until she rips the skin of normalcy off the star. Hard bone and human emotion beneath. If on my best day as a writer, I can ever master that quality, it will be a very good day for me indeed. Our next category is novella mainstream. Is Christmas Threat by Lynn Shannon. Our next is Cold Drip by Heather Day Gilbert. Cold Drip was inspired by her visits to the nearby caverns, and Roast Date, her other book, is a Christmas mystery featuring her sleuth Macy's found family next door, her neighbor Vera. It's always a delight to craft a Barks and Beans cafe mysteries because she's able to integrate her readers' beloved dogs into the storylines as shelter dogs visiting the cafe. For example, Cold Drip highlights a dog named Sadie, and Roast Date highlights Thistle and Copper, all based directly on her readers' canine companions. Yeah. Next, we have Justified Vengeance by Lori Matthews. And then our next one is Roast Date by Heather Day Gilbert. So she had 2 finalists. I also asked our published finalists what they wish they knew. I asked our unpublished finalists what were their favorite craft books. There was so much information and we wanted to go home sometime today. So that's all on a PDF on the website. So I'll give you a link for that. And it's a lot of really great information. So I highly recommend it. So she says, she says for published authors, what she wished she knew, that it's very likely you'll enjoy writing what you love to read. She's always been a mystery reader, tearing through Encyclopedia Brown and Nancy Drew books as a child, and then moving on to Agatha Christie, Phyllis Whitney, and Mary Higgins Clark's books as a teen. In fact, her border doodle is named Agatha, much to her children's dismay. She relaxes by watching mystery series on TV, so it makes sense that writing in the mystery genre would feel natural to her. She wished she'd learned that earlier in her writing career. Next, we have The Vow by D.L. Wood. She said, yes. She says she's drawn to the idea of ordinary people finding themselves in extraordinarily harrowing circumstances and rising to the challenge. Kate, the protagonist in the story, has so many challenges to overcome before the danger even enters the picture. Finding out whether she comes out of the crisis victorious and how she manages to do it kept her glued to the keyboard. Our honorable mentions are Christmas Threat by Lynn Shannon, Roast Date by Heather Day Gilbert. Third place goes to The Vow by D.L. Wood. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Second place goes to Justified Vengeance by Lori Matthews. And first place goes to Cold Drip by Heather Day Gilbert. Rebecca was published in 1938, and it was based on, or the house was based on Mennebilly, which literally had a skeleton in the basement. She was doing some reconstruction and there was a skeleton in there. She loved the house. I don't think the kids loved it quite as much. But Danielle Wong, from Published Mainstream Finalist, says she is a longtime Daphne du Maurier fan and loves her rich settings and atmospheric prose. Rebecca is one of her all-time favorite novels. Mimi Matthews, who wrote Bella Belgrave Square, published romantic suspense, she said she's a huge fan of du Maurier's novels, particularly Rebecca. She not only loves the Gothic atmosphere and air of mystery and suspense, she also loves her unparalleled use of language. She writes so beautifully and so evocatively. Her ability to conjure a scene is magical. D.L. Wood said, I read Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca many years ago, and of course have seen the movie adaptations. It's a brilliantly atmospheric tale that sucks you in, makes you think, you know what's happening, only to flip those presumptions on their head and leave you in awe. She also creates a world where the settings are characters contributing to the story rather than simply serving as a backdrop. Our next category is published romantic suspense, long category. Again, in alphabetical order, we have Cold Silence by Toni Anderson. She'd been thinking about a serial killer auctioning off torture and murder for the pleasure of profit since she wrote the very first cold justice book back in 2012-ish. She thinks she might even mention that Alex Parker, one of her protagonists, is hunting someone way back. When she finally started to writing about the FBI's hostage rescue team, she thought she could bring everything together and hopefully make it work. It just seems very relevant at the moment. Next, we have Crash Site by Rachel Grant. Disarming Cain by Janet Obeidessano. Disarming Cain was the third book in a single couple series. They're the first couple I wrote and published, so they'll always have a spot in my heart. This particular book was a big leap forward, both in their relationship and in the series-length mystery. I loved all of that, but my favorite part was being able to amp up the danger element. It was a challenge, given that I'd already set much of the scene in the first two books, but bringing in more bad guys and more chaos was an absolute blast. Flashpoint by Tracy Devlin is part of the Steel Ridge series, the Blackwell series, which she co-authored with Adrian Giordano. When we first conceived the idea of a family of asset recovery agents, she immediately loved the idea of Zeke Blackwell being the reluctant leader of this band of black sheeps. Liv Westcott came to her more slowly, but then she realized the absolute best person to go head to head with a man who doesn't hesitate to break the rules to complete a recovery was a by-the-book FBI agent. Next, we have Into the Storm by Rachel Grant. Our honorable mentions go to Rachel Grant, Into the Storm, Tracy Devlin, Flashpoint. Third place goes to Rachel Grant, Crash Site. Second place goes to Janet Obeidessano, Disarming Cain. And first place goes to Toni Anderson for Cold Silence. She writes that she's shocked and grateful to have won this from this outstanding group of finalists. As we all know, writing is a solitary endeavor, but publishing is a team sport. Thanks to my critique partner, Kathy Altman, who I found at the start of my writing journey and who has never let me down. Appreciation to my editors and proofreader, Deb Nemeth, Joan Turner, and Alicia Dean. Thanks to Rachel Grant, my fellow double finalist, for a great beta read and always being there when I need a friend to vent to. And the Sexy Six, they know who they are. One more thing for my fellow finalists. No one lost today. You wrote great books, and at this stage, I think luck, and according to one judge's comments on my book that didn't final this year, comma usage plays a huge part in determining the actual winner. Today, I got very lucky. A final thanks so much to the judges for their hard work and the hard work of the organizers. Writing every book is like a purge. At the end of it, one is empty, like a shell on the beach, waiting for the tide to come again. Again, this is her writing about, or talking about writing. She was also a huge avid sailor, in addition to being an equestrian. The museum is amazing if you ever get to go there. Next, we have our short category finalists. It's Christmas Baby Rescue by Jordan Redwood. Her dog is Lucy, and I had to add that too, because it's just too darn cute. Okay. Christmas Baby Rescue was a story she had on her mind for a long time, particularly the opening scene of a baby abandoned on a doorstep on Christmas Eve, and the self-isolated hero who finds her. Working as a nurse, she sees how mental health issues can cause people to withdraw from society, and she wanted to explore these issues with a hero who had also served our country and was suffering from PTSD. What would it take to get him re-engaged into society? Next, we have Necessary Peril by Lynn Shannon. Shielding Her Son by K.D. Richards. Twin Murder Mix-Up by Sammy Abrams. Wyoming Winter Rescue by Juno Rushton. The person who most encouraged my writing career, aside from my mother, was my high school English teacher. She saw a spark in me and encouraged it by allowing me to write fictional stories aside from regular class work. She would then critique me and encourage me to reach deeper and write richer. She opened up the possibility of me having a writing career. And the honorable mentions go to Sammy Abrams for Twin Murder Mix-Up, Jordan Redwood for Christmas Baby Rescue. Third place goes to K.D. Richards for Shielding Her Son. Second place goes to Juno Rushton for Wyoming Winter Rescue. And first place goes to Lynn Shannon for Necessary Peril. Here was the freedom I desired, long sought for not yet known freedom to walk, to wander, freedom to climb hills, to pull a boat, to be alone. Eliza Carter, our romantic suspense unpublished finalist, said she fell in love with mystery novels after encountering Nancy Drew at the library. But then, when she was about 12, her mom introduced her to Rebecca, shoving the book at her and saying, "You should read this." Very typical of her mother. It was a well-worn copy from her own expansive bookcase. I discovered that heroines did not need to be perfect, that they could in fact be deeply flawed, and I would still root for them. I also found out that I like a bit of romance and poor decisions based on lust, mixed with a well-plotted and paced mystery. Poor Nancy Drew went to the back burner for a while. For decades, moms, aunts, librarians, and booksellers, women everywhere, have acted as the guardians of Rebecca, handing her to adolescents when they are deemed ready. Its appeal is evergreen. Sharing Rebecca with the younger generation is a beautiful, empowering tradition. Our next category is the romantic suspense category. We have Connection by R.L. Merrill. She says she wrote this book to honor her friend, the real Cassidy, who is an incredibly brave, talented, and generous woman. She's the only person she knows who, when asked what she wanted to be when she grew up at 7, she said, "A pilot." When everyone tried to convince her she really meant flight attendant, she confidently asserted that no, she meant pilot. Fiona and the Enigmatic Earl by Grace Calloway. Forbidden Love by Marissa Garden. We have a picture of her writing space. She says, "This is the view from where I write. The temptation to procrastinate is hard to ignore." She conceived the idea for Forbidden Love while her husband and she were visiting the Mayan ruins in Chichen Itza, Mexico. El Castillo, the step pyramid poster child for this famous archaeological site, and her cover image was truly inspiring. The tales of human sacrifice magnified by the eeriness of the ruins and produced the sensation of being watched by unsettled spirits. She believes in ghosts, and she felt a lot of the company as she explored the area. She kept thinking about what incredible stories the spirits would tell if they could speak to the living. So she created a Mayan myth about forbidden love as the foundation for her plot. The heroine's goals would be to prove the myth was true. She used the spirits of mythical lovers to tell their tales as she wove together two love stories, a tragic one set in the ancient Mayan culture and a happier one in the present. And that's how Forbidden Love was born.
Heartstone by Rose Sarton.
Her inspiration was one hot July day. Her husband Gary came in from working in her garden and handed her a dirt-encrusted piece of flint. He was grinning, and she knew that he'd given him was more than just another piece of rock. She carried it to the sink and held it under a stream of water. She held a perfectly knapped spearhead. It was a rare find. The chert or flint was a beautiful silver gray and rose hue, but more unusual was the vein of iron oxide at the tip. The mineral discoloration looked like dry blood. She wondered if the warrior who created the weapon had crafted the point for that effect. Then she wondered about the man himself. How did he live? Did he have a family? How did he die? From those musings, Heartstone took shape in her mind. The Belle of Belgrave Square by Mimi Matthews. This was inspired by Victorian sensation novels, thrilling, often melodramatic, stories with elements of romance, crime, and an emphasis on hidden secrets and identities. It was also influenced by her fondness for fairy tales and legends like Beauty and the Beast and Bluebeard's Wife. She loved weaving the fairy tale tropes and sensation-style Victorian elements together, all while preserving the sincerity of the romance. It made Belle an absolute pleasure to write. And our honorable mentions go to R.L. Merrill for Connection. Congratulations. You're very welcome. Marissa Garner for Forbidden Love.
Third place goes to Rose Sarton for Heartstone.
Second place goes to Mimi Matthews, The Belle of Belgrave Square. And first place goes to Fiona and the Enigmatic Earl by Grace Calloway.
First off, my sincere thanks and gratitude to the Kiss of Death Awards Committee for their hard work and dedication to promoting excellence in romantic mystery and suspense. I am so honored to receive the Daphne this year, especially given the amazing books put out there by my talented fellow finalists. Y'all are wreaking havoc on my TBR pile. I have so many people to thank for the existence of Fiona and the Enigmatic Earl. I'd like to thank my editor, Veronica Nelson, and my proofreaders for making my book shine. To my readers, you guys are the best, and I appreciate each and every one of you for supporting my characters and the world that I've been writing in. And also to my writing posse, I couldn't do it without our daily texts, our weekly meetups, and our inspiring retreats. Last but not least, thank you to my family, who not only puts up with a working writer, but supports her in living out her dreams. I am just so full of gratitude. Thank you, everyone.
Really horrible because we have these amazing first place prizes. So Carol, will you please come up and get your first place prize? I am so sorry. I was like, I know I'm forgetting something.
I just don't have to say anything.
No.
All right.
There you go. You're welcome. Oh, and you can take this with you. It's easier to pack.
Yeah.
So much. All right, so at the end of our competition, we have overall winners, the people who have the highest scores for the unpublished division and the published division. This is a total surprise for them. So the 25th anniversary Daphne du Maurier Award for Excellence in Mystery Suspense overall division winners. Our unpublished division overall winner is Elaine Clampett. Congratulations. A Crystal Book Award. And for our published division, it is Tony Anderson for Cold Silence. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming here tonight, and I would like us to raise a glass to our entrants, our amazing finalists who managed to be here today. Congratulations to you all. As I said, I asked our finalists what their favorite writing craft books were and some writing advice. You can find all of their answers at the website, rwakissofdeath.org/KOD contest. It's 4 pages, guys, and it's quality stuff. You definitely want it. Awards and certificates will be mailed out by the end of July. And thank you again to our amazing volunteers for making this happen. Finally, I want to point out that we are having the cruise, which Tiana already talked about tonight. So just a reminder to keep you interested in that. And Tiana, did you want to say a few words? No. Okay. Then enjoy your chocolate. Good night, everyone.